Hey, would you like to learn how to use these really well? Hey, that's been my area of expertise for the last, oh my God, a number of years. And I can remember when Professor Rovenko personally handed me this device back in 2002 after I completed the master's training. And I went home on the tube in London and I was like, oh my God, look at this thing. And I turned it on and then I scrolled through the settings and quite honestly, even though I'd gone through the master's training, I was pretty much bamboozled, as you will be too. Now, this unit here is a full professional, and it's obviously an earlier unit. It was made actually in 2003 on this label, so it must have been 2003 when I graduated, and it's the RITM SCENAR 1NT version 02. So it's got a lot of the extra features in, and it's a totally professional unit. Now this one over here is the SCENAR, which is the Russian spelling for scanner, and they call this the O1. It's like the home professional unit with the world's smallest LED screen. In fact, I'm going to have to get my glasses on here to be able to read it. So, you know, these units have been around a long time, and quite frankly, they haven't changed that much in the last decade or so. I see there are a couple of units out new now, and hey, but you know, the original scanner worked superbly well. In fact, they got that 88.50% cure rates across 18,255 people in the 80s, and you can catch that report on my site here. However, what I really want to share with you is that, you know, one of the things that happened for me was like I used this non-stop for about 3 years in my practice, both in London and here in Hawaii. And I diligently did the protocols according to the Russian training that I'd got. And you know what? I was still confused as why we were getting results. And quite frankly, it was only when I got a cheaper unit made by, dare I say it, DENAS, that I began to experiment with it, and I could get results which were indiscernibly different. In other words, they worked equally well as this cheaper DENAS unit. But hey, let's not go there yet, even though I would highly recommend the less expensive unit and getting my thorough training that's going to help you to competently and confidently use these in any situation. We'll get to that in a moment. So the scanner world has said that these things went into outer space and they were developed for the Russian space program, and part of that's true and the outer space part is untrue. And there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation, and quite frankly, it's been quite a rough ride for the RITM scanner group. I remember back in 2009 one day, and I got this email from my web service provider, and he said that RITM had said that I was abusing the trademark. I didn't know there was any trademark for scanner at that time. In fact, it had been in the public domain at that time for at least, I don't know, 10, 20 years. And it came as a total surprise to me. However, it was the way it was done. And instead of contacting me and say, hey, we like what you're doing, and maybe you could put trademark next to the word scanner for us, because we now have the scanner trademark, actually, which incidentally they lost in further litigations, and do it that way. But no, they went straight to my service provider and cut me off. Well, kind of like, I went like, whoa, here I have been promoting these units for a number of years, and obviously they didn't like what I was doing. Why? Well, there were several reasons, and I'm not sure as to what their methodology was, and I don't think they were particularly targeting myself. I noticed that other people had had the same thing too. So it wasn't that, I don't know what they were doing. In fact, in Scott Mumbry's, Dr. Keith Scott Mumbry's latest book, he has a chapter on medicine. I think it's like page 350 or something in the book. And he has a whole chapter on it. And he talks about, alludes to this scandalous, what's going on with the scanner group. And quite frankly, there was a lot of infighting and this and that and the other. And, you know, why hasn't this stuff got into everybody's house? Why aren't these devices out everywhere? Well, a major reason is because you as people, us, we've been all indoctrinated for millennia by a very crafty mafia that's been ruling the planet. And quite frankly, in America and Canada and Australia and Europe, they've been like really, really powerful in undermining and dissing anything that works anything well, especially if it's going to take away from their corporate profits. And I think, maybe I'm wrong here, I think that the board of directors of SCENAR, RITM Group, became undermined by these trolls sitting on their board, making it difficult for them to get this stuff out to the planet. Now, a few years ago, when I started, most people didn't really respect Russia for anything. It was like they were reds under the bed or whatever the story had that they're going on in their mind. Or it could be, oh, who knows what it was. But in the recent, especially in the last few days, with the stuff that's going on in Syria, we're seeing a side of Russia that actually is looking like it's really benevolent to the rest of humanity. And, quite frankly, the way that these devices work, you need to really pay attention and get one of these, even if you don't get any training, just get one and get going with it, because that's what's going to make a difference in your life. So, how does it work? Well, there are a number of things, and I go into the details of how to work with it and how it works in my 3-month training, which I do encourage you, if you're a professional, to get. It's second to none on the planet. You're going to learn how to work on it, work with it on yourself. You're going to be able to learn how to do different diagnostic processes that are not included in the Russian training because they haven't gone this deep as I have. Why did I go so deep? Because, well, when I was a little boy, well, actually I was 14. Actually, my son now is 14. And when I was his age, a wall fell on my head and it cracked my neck. And ever since then, for, I don't know, 40 years or whatever, 50 years or whatever it was, I had excruciating pain down here, numbness, headaches, ringing in my ears, stiff back, stiff shoulders, lumbers were out. It was excruciating. And back then, even the doctor said, well, there's nothing much we can do except put you under the knife. And I was going like, that ain't for me. I mean, I was, fortunate that I went to a Rudolf Steiner school. I knew there were different ways of looking at things and systems and the planet and our co-creation on this planet. So I knew inherently that there was something really wrong with that approach. Well, I endured the pain and the headaches and the grumpy moods and sometimes ill temper for many, many decades. And the others around me too, God bless them. And what happened is that when I started working with this, and when I started working with Professor Vravenko's training and everything else, I was sort of getting some relief, but nothing like the clinical trials, where basically in the musculoskeletal group, it's like essentially 100% cure rates. And, it depends on the group, but if it's anything that's torn muscles, etc., it's basically 100%. It's like in high 90s. And if you know what you're doing, it's 100%. And if you're persistent enough, and that's a big clue, you've got to be persistent with this, especially in this day's political toxicity, in this planet that's chemtrail, that's GMO, that's toxic, right? Our oceans are toxic, our water is toxic, our food is toxic, no matter which way you look at it, and our minds are especially toxic from all of the indoctrination and the movies and the stupid schools and everything else that happens out there. Yeah, I'm that sort of a guy. I'm not a medical doctor. Probably you guessed that, right? And really, you should be grateful that I'm not. Because what I did was I spent, I think it was like 10 or 12 years studying sound and sacred geometry and creating sound environments and teaching people how to use them. And when I came across this work, I went like, wow, I'm not going to work with the sound anymore, I'm going to work with electricity. And so I started working with this, and I have cracked the code. like nobody else on the planet. In fact, I have doctors in the training. I even have people that are working with gold medalists in my training because they want to learn from the best. So if that's you, think about it. And really consider it. So why don't you just like sign in at the bottom here, click on the blue link, and what you'll do is you'll get a link to an appraisal. And it's a very, very quick form. It's like takes you probably a minute to fill out. And from that data, which actually incidentally has nothing to do with your ailments, from that data I will be able to assess which scanner device is best for you and which training you will need to